フルカウンター
Alright boys, welcome back to the Grand Cross video. The new Elaine is dropping tonight, or literally out right now when you're watching the video. And the big question right now is, should you be summoning? Now, we're going to go through the character's kit details and is it even worth summoning? And of course, go over what could be coming, because I think that's by far probably the biggest thing about this Elaine. The possibility of what's coming could make this character a lot stronger, and that's kind of what feels like going to happen, because half her kit doesn't really work in a way. We'll go through that in a second. But boys, if you're new and you're enjoying the content for Grand Cross, then do subscribe. We are doing Grangers content daily. But yeah, let's jump into it. So on screen now, you can see the little setup we have going here. Let's start with the banner. The banner itself is by far probably one of the worst things. Honestly, it feels like this is the best character in the game, and the character was so good they had to make the banner bad, which is just not the case, because she herself is actually decent, but she's not the best character in the game. So I don't know why they've shafted this banner so much here. You know, Netmarble has kind of annoyed me lately with all these 600 down banners that they just don't put any effort into them. Like, it's by far one of the worst things. Now, do note though that I guess the big surprise or big pride of the banner is the new Ella Elizabeth, who, to be fair, was free at one point during the actual game. Granted, you only get the character, you still have to actually get her to Ella, so it's not like you're going to get Ella straight away, which would be a different story. At that point, it actually might be a must summon. Would I summon the Chase, Elaine, and Elizabeth? Probably not. If you actually just want Elizabeth, it's kind of your reason for summoning. I will say, at the end of the year, she's probably going to be in the banner for the New Year's banner, which will have the New Year Festival, most likely in New Meliodas. If we can vote or we can't vote, they may just put her in. It's, you know, I do suspect her, now that she's in the game, to start appearing on more festival banners. Probably not the next one, but the one afterwards, maybe November, December. She is definitely going to be one you want to get. But as I said, if you have already, then you're kind of fine. You don't need to summon here. Elaine herself, we're going to go for her skills, but as you can see on screen now, the big recommended units you have to have for her are obviously fairies. The character herself is going to buff her fairies. Barn, since his passive does work with fairies, can be a good substitute a little bit, but you're not going to get the full passive. But obviously, his secretary Barn is just such a good character. So the fact that him and Elaine work together is actually pretty good. By far, probably the biggest thing about this Elaine is just the buff up King. I mean, she's a fairy buffer, which you would think buff up fairies, but there are no other fairies in the game apart from basically King. And King is kind of, I mean, it's almost been 2 years, which we'll get into who could become in a second. But by far, the two best Kings right now, and the only two usable Kings, are Sweet Jelly King, which to be fair, has a weak point. Actually pretty good with this Elaine. They actually just nuke together. She herself has got a single target weak point, so they actually have pretty good synergy together, not too bad. This King, I've seen videos of her. He's absolutely wrecks if you can start first, but it's not meta, right? Going on to the other Festival King, if you have his Relic, he is going to do lots as well. Once again, similar situation. Good AoE damage. King, the Festival one, I think lacks a little bit, because typically you want to use 2 skills, but everyone right now is running Evade Food, and also as well is running the Tamil Grace. So it kind of cucks him. This King can only really do one big nuke every 2 times, because you're always going to get disabled. So I'd definitely go towards obviously Sweet Jelly King, but he is not in the banner, unfortunately. This would have been made a lot of sense if this King was actually on the banner, which is once again leading into what's coming, and that is new festival. At the end of the month, or literally in 2 weeks time, we're going to be getting an actual new festival character, and it's a good chance it's going to be a new King, and that's kind of why this Elaine may actually turn out to be good. So there's one thing I want to stress right now. If you're on global, I recommend not summoning until we get the new King, because we will see what the new King is and what he does, or who he actually is, on JP before this banner leaves on global. Which means if this new King comes out and it actually is a King, maybe Glucksina 2, then you will know straight away if you actually need to get this Elaine, because the King may come out and actually might just be a Sin buffer, you know, might be a Giant buffer, might not actually work too well with Elaine and other fairies. So there's always something to look out for, but I recommend do waiting, don't summon, do your 1-3 multi, and then just kind of leave it. I didn't put them on the graphics, but boys, we are getting close to 4 nights of Apocalypse, and also the end of 7 Days Sins, which means they're going to start doing 4 nights, and also possibly could be doing the movies. So Dahlia and also obviously Lancelot are 2 fairies that we're probably going to get in the future. Once again, we don't know when, but they're probably going to be good characters, and this Elaine might be good, but depends how far in the future. Could get outdated because half her kit doesn't even work. So let's go through our actual skills. We'll start off with the actual passive. The passive is at the start of the battle, you're going to apply a buff towards your fairy allies. So once again, you want to use fairies. Doesn't work with Barn, but Barn's good himself. He doesn't really need the extra buff here. That's going to increase their critical defense by 60% for 2 turns. The next part of passive is going to be for every buff applied towards the fairy allies, you're going to increase your allies multiplies actual damage dealt by 8% up to 32 times. So you only need 4 buffs to max this completely out, right? And bear in mind, she herself does have a buff skill that applies a buff anyway. So you're always going to constantly have 3 out of 4 max. You do have to find one way to get a buff onto your actual fairy allies to get this to fully max out. But this shouldn't be a problem. You can probably use Nanashi sub slot maybe. Or if the actual critical defense is actually a buff, I'm not entirely too sure. But you can essentially max out this passive very, very easy. And the next part is also at the start of the ally's turn, apply a debuff onto all the enemies to actually reduce their D4 stats by 20% for 1 turn. And that's going to apply every single turn. And also for every debuff applied onto the enemy team, you are going to increase your allies' attack rate stats by 5% up to 20 times. So you only need to have 4 debuffs onto the enemy team, which you're going to constantly apply 3. So you're going to be at 15% attack rates. That's every single turn. You have to find some way to apply a debuff, which once again King can do, Sour Grace can do that, or if you're bringing obviously Barn can do that naturally as well. So you're constantly always going to have a damage increase, you're constantly going to have attack rate stats. It's an actually insane passive, only if we had a pretty good King. Now granted, Fairy King and obviously Harlequin are actually pretty good characters, but they're not top tier broken. So we are hoping for that new King can be that character. The first skill is going to be a single target weak point. Once again, she's going to apply a debuff every single turn. It's not a bad skill. I would have wished it was AoE. If it was AoE, it might have been actually one of the top tier characters. Because we've seen Tyr, we've seen Brunhild, we've seen Philo. AoE weak point's one of the best skills in the game for AoE damage. And then for a skill 2, she's going to increase attack rate stats again by 30%, obviously on a tier 3. But this is like, what, 50% on a tier 1? Honestly, insane. Like, the characters increase damage dealt, increasing attack rate stats. Unfortunately, no basic stats. Kind of the thing the team's lacking a little bit, which is where you can bring Harlequin, you know, the big adult wing king, to actually get that bit of basic stats and bit of damage reduction with his shield. But honestly, we just need a new fairy. I mean, you can bring Hellbrum a sub slot to get 27 basic fairies, but if we get a new King, a new Hellbrum, a new, you know, Gloxinia's armor version, this Elaine can easily become actually a top tier team, a top tier contender to be actually in the PvP meta. I think right now she's going to be okay, but I think she's a character that is probably by far the best fairy buff we've got in a long time. If only we had an LR King to go along with her. Moving on to the ultimate, her ultimate just doesn't work, literally. So what she does is she releases damage, which is basically damage of her time effects. It is bleed, poison, or shock. However, the character herself does not apply bleed, poison, or shock. If you do decide to bring Sweet Jelly King, he can do bleed on an AoE, I believe it is, with his AoE skill, and I think it apply poison as well. So you can get some use of that ultimate, but if you are going to be bringing obviously Barn and, like, let's say 4-wing King, the ultimate is not going to do anything. But granted, Elaine herself is just there to be a buffer. The way the team is designed, you're probably going to kill within 1 or 2 turns. You're not really going to get too many ultimates off for her. And I don't think she's going to be the win condition if you do decide to offer anyway. You're going to be more or less relying on Barn and your other kings, basically. So yeah, that's what the Elaine does. Let's put her in the actual ranking about where I see she's going to be headed in the future. For longevity, we have her at 3-star. Once again, I think she's by far the best fairy buffer we've got in, I think, ever. She's actually insane if we had actual more fairies in the game. However, that is the problem. Are we going to get more fairies? Is this a new king going to come out in 2 weeks' time? If it is King, is it going to be a fairy team? I mean, obviously you can use fairies, but there's no basic stats, and we saw the actual human team, while they have a lot of characters that increase their own basic stats, they're just very, very squishy still. We need more ways to get more stats with fairies. I'm hoping this new actual king that does come out can do that, or hopefully new Gloxinia or new fairy, you know, Dahlia. Just, we need one more fairy, whether that be a sub slot, just to kind of put the fairy team together to make an actual decent team. Going on to PP, once again, she is very, very good. She is basically made for PP. The passive is going to be insane, but only 3-star right now because we don't have that top tier king. If we do get a light king to give them a bit more defense related stats, you know the actual light passive will kind of help our team quite a lot here, and that's when I believe the character can go up to a 4-star. Moving on to PvE, since she is more or less a PvE character, while she does work in PvE, she does weak point, right? So like, you're never going to be able to do damage towards bosses because most bosses are debuff immune, so her herself is basically useless other than applying more stats and more attack rate stats towards your fairy team, which you're typically not bringing into the demonic battles. And you could bring it to Hero Arena, but it's kind of close towards PvP, and I wouldn't really class that as PvE content, but that's something you can look out for. Now, moving on to the overall, while most of the stats here are 3-star, I am going to give it a 3.5 just for the possibility of actually getting a new king. And I do think when we do get a new king and there's some new fairies, this could go up to a 4-star, but I would say if we don't get a new fairy king, or if we don't get new fairies with a new festival character, she's definitely dropping down to a 3-star for me. I just think if you're not planting these fairies, or if you haven't invested in the fairies with the relics and with the Hellbrum basic stat relic, which you can easily make, to be fair, but if you haven't made those, then it's yeah, not really worth it. Elaine is a cool character. I'm glad that they've actually given out quite a good passive towards a character that we don't see much use in PvP, so I'm actually looking forward to and hoping we can get a new king, and then maybe we can actually summon for this Elaine. But personally for me, I think I'll be skipping because I just spent a lot of damage on the new AOT collaboration, so I'm kind of broke right now. Gonna start seeing for a new festival character. To be fair, the next festival character I might even skip because we know what's coming towards the end of the year. Back-to-back festivals with a light and dark, probably. I imagine both light Meliodas maybe and a dark Chaos Alpha, which is definitely a priority. I'm sure the new festival character is going to be really good, and maybe it might be a king. We'll have to wait and see who it is, because if it's king in his little armor form with his little spikes he's got going on, then maybe I do have to summon, because that is a king that I actually really like. So boys, thank you for watching. Let me know if you guys are going to be summoning. It's always hard to try and rank these characters, especially the fairies and, you know, giant, because we don't know what Netmarble was planned. So far, the fairy and also giant meta just has never been a thing, I guess, apart from, you know, the first like few weeks of Grand Cross with you know, King Brum. So it's very hard to say if the fairies are either going to have a spot in the meta, but I really hope they do. And I would love if Lancelot comes out to change that as well, but who knows how these characters are going to be designed and who they actually buff. So boys, thank you for watching, and yeah, peace.